as I've come down from Las Vegas, the better part of 8 years building the Las Vegas Investment Club, which became the Investment Club of America. And I have many relationships with those of you who are in the room and those of you who are watching by camera. I don't do this very often, but I do it when it's important. And I do it when there is a material update. And I know many of you said, look, Mike, we've heard it many times. You've given us much disclosure, but this summer there was an article written about me in the Review Journal that, as I always tell you guys, I will read it and I will talk about it. And the reason I do that is because I always want to make sure there's 100% transparency. I always want to make sure that, you know, you have to realize that to build an organization to the size that we've built it, been involved in several deals like Adventure Combat Ops, where all the money's paid back to everyone who gets involved, and we're running a royalty stream right now, so the return on investment is infinite. We've done factoring deals, all the money came in, all the money came out. We did a subprime lending deal that lasted 3 years that started out at 24%, second year 18%, third year 12%. We've been getting distribution payments on the fitness facilities. We did 68 condominiums in Desert Shores. It went very, very well. All the money came in. We made 3 years of distribution payments plus a large gain when we sold it. The track record has been phenomenal. But that has never stopped the relentless attack of the British Columbia Securities Commission. And so, instead of me talking about it, what I've done over the last couple of years is I made a short video that involves a little bit of interaction with some members, and it involves a little bit of an interview with myself to explain. Then what I'd like to do is read parts of the article, and then I'd like to give you guys an update of what happened during my summer vacation.
Okay.
Okay? So Don, can you hit it and let's show the video. How many of you have heard me at great length talk about what has happened in the past with respect to an adjudication in Canada where the BC Securities Commission ruled against me and fined me? Who has heard me talk about that at great length? And who has heard me talk about that a lot at meetings to a point where club members say, shut up, Mike, you've heard it over and over again. Now, let me ask you this is an important question. But when you get involved in projects and you work with me on projects, do you feel there's a great deal of transparency? Raise your hand if you're
Absolutely.
and thoroughness, because that's something that's very, very important. Raise your hand if over the last several years you think that I've gained your trust.
Absolutely.
James, you're never raising your hand, you're just sitting there writing your notes. But I'll make you pay attention now. Okay, so everyone's hand's going up by yours. So here, James, do me a favor, raise your hand twice if you agree to the last two. Okay, we're good. Darcy.
I'd just like to say that since the beginning you've been completely open and honest, and I think your integrity is top notch, and I have no doubts at all about your integrity or the way you bring information to us. You're very thorough on your background, digging into the facts and the deals and stuff, and I'm very, very impressed with how you bring things to us.
Great stuff, thank you.
I do remember being brought to one of your personal residences to discuss some things, some questions that we had about some of the investments, so that it could be thoroughly explained, and so that your position and Jeff's position could be ironed out, and things were.
I think that's one thing I really pride in. Raise your hand if you've been to my house. Okay. And why do I do that? Because I want all the members of the club to feel very comfortable. And so come to my house where I live. You know where to find me. You know where I am. I've got a lot of stuff in there. It's packed in. And I have you come out there because, look, I want everyone to feel like it's a friendship, and I very much pride in it. Because it's one thing if I tell a story. It's another thing. Let me ask Fawn a question. How many of you made money in this room as a result of working with me? Okay. How many of you are happy that you've been working with me over the last several years? Okay. And I appreciate it because collectively, you guys in this small little group constitute millions and millions of dollars. But we're doing really, really well. I'll say as a testament that's very, very positive. Even in what we created as a club, and I'm very proud of the club members, because in the last 2.5 years, we've created over 400 new jobs. But I gotta tell you guys, I invited you guys back because I have a personal relationship with all of you. I certainly, I don't interact all the time with you guys, but I certainly consider you friends. So I'm very, very thankful, and thanks for sticking back and helping out a bit. So thanks very much, guys, and good night. All right, thank you. All right, thank you. And Sean, I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Darcy. Yeah. Really appreciate it. Yeah, he's a new guy. Welcome to the club. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
All right, brother. Thanks.
So, Mike, I know you run a pretty successful investment organization, and I know there's been a lot of chatter on the internet, especially with the BCSC Commission in Canada. Can you explain a little bit more on what happened and why all that happened, in the past?
Yeah, sure. The BC Securities Commission had a civil adjudication that ruled against me, and they fined me for $40 million. I disagreed with the ruling. The regulators actually fully admitted that I had no personal gain, and in fact lost more than any other single investor. What had happened at that point was I was doing a number of developments in Edmonton, Alberta, and at a time where the subprime mortgage crisis was occurring. And I actually misread the market in a way whereby I felt that the Canadian market would be much more stabilized, because in Canada you still had to put 20% down to buy a house, whereas in the United States there was negative amortization, there was qualification for loans with very little documentation. And it was all going well in Canada. I had pre-sold a few hundred building lots, but then what happened was the collapse of Lehman Brothers. When Lehman Brothers collapsed, what happened was Toronto Dominion Bank, within a period of 30 days, called all land development loans in Edmonton. And so what happened was, essentially in a very short period of time, the few hundred lots that I pre-sold to builders, all that profit, all that money that had materialized essentially evaporated overnight. And all my payments were current with Toronto Dominion Bank. I went to the finance minister at that time in Canada, named Flaherty, and he was not of any real assistance. There was a lot going on with a lot of people at the time. And essentially, there was no need for it, because all my payments were current. I was in good standing. And Toronto Dominion Bank came in and essentially canceled loans that were all in good standing, because it could, according to the contract, the the finance facilities that I had set up with them. And I actually created a YouTube video that I'd encourage anyone to look at. It's basically Toronto Dominion Bank and Mike Lathigee, and Lathigee, and you can actually see it, and it's got several thousand views, and it's basically the story of what Toronto Dominion Bank did in large capacity to put my company out of business. However, what the regulators determined was I did not have enough disclosure in my financial statements. They felt that the company was in a much more unstable position than I had disclosed. I disagreed. I disagreed because we had sold, our balance sheet was strong. We had sold a few hundred lots. In addition, I had 2 former CFOs who were at the adjudication. They gave testimony for over 2 days, about 16 hours of testimony. They described how the disclosure was accurate. They disclosed how what I was talking about was in fact the actual case of the shape the company was in at that point. However, in the end, the adjudicators disagreed. They ruled against me. The fine was $40 million, and since then I have launched several lawsuits that I've won successfully. Those are located on vindication.com, and on those it really talks about, in a lot of ways, I called it that because it's a lot of vindication towards my name. Another thing too is investors who have gotten involved with me over the last 5 years. I've always stated very publicly, make sure you go on the internet, Google my name, and get all your questions answered before you invest in any project that I'm doing.
So you disclose that publicly very, very clearly?
Yeah, both in the prospectus, and because the type of investments meetings that I do, it's never done just through email and electronic mail and over the internet. Everything is done in person. I meet with everybody. It's I call it the Las Vegas Investment Club. I meet with everyone. We'll have anywhere, at our typical meeting between 50 and about 200 people, and they have been told many times. I've told them the story. I've answered all the questions, and I think one thing that very much is going in favor right now is I've led several deals that have gone very well over the last 5 years, and basically it's gotten to a point where the members or the investors say, look, we know everything, we're comfortable with it, you don't have to keep talking about it. But I do keep talking about it. And I do keep talking about it because I always want to make sure it's out in the public domain. And I'm not going to go on and change anything on the internet. I'm proud of my track record. I'm proud of what I've done in the past. I certainly have not been right every time. I certainly give fault that I misread the subprime mortgage crisis. But again, the biggest loser on all that was in fact myself. I came to Las Vegas, and I came down here with zero. And rebuilt. I actually borrowed money to buy the house that I originally got when I came down here, with investors who still supported me, paid them back, and have done very well since then on rebuilding, and have a lot of happy people.
Gotcha. So Mike, now I know there's been some recent news articles in several newspapers about some things that's happened in the past. Care to comment on some of those different stories in some of the media outlets? Yeah,
that's a great question. Thanks, Steve. There's been articles. The most recent one was certainly a story that talked about the $40 million fine levied against me, and it was written in such a way that conveyed a message that somehow I took $40 million, came down to Las Vegas, and was living some sort of great lifestyle. The reality was I came to Las Vegas and I rebuilt. I borrowed money from people who still believed in me, were willing to support. I was able to buy a house and paid those people back with a return. And actually, it's interesting because in that particular article that I'm referring to, they showed a picture of my house, the front, the back, and the aerial view, and they basically sort of implied that somehow the money was the money was taken from investors and used for that. It couldn't be further from the truth. I will reiterate again that the adjudicators fully admitted in the ruling against me that I had no personal gain. So that type of stuff, you know, you don't really fight against. What you do is you just continue to do the very best that you can for the people who are involved with you now, the investors who are involved. I have a great track record. I have many investors, it's in the hundreds, who've reinvested in several projects, and I'm sure most, if not all, would be a walking support for their involvement with me. I'm very, very transparent. I certainly talk about everything to do with the past, and although my people get involved in private companies, or private offerings that I set up, I organize, and I manage, I set everything up in a way that no other money manager does something. I don't take any money out until my people are fully repaid. And then at that point, my general way I do it is it's a 50-50 split after that. In the last several years, we've had several projects we've got in. The investors have gotten all their money out, and now in some cases they're on a royalty stream. I'll give you a great example. There's a local tourist attraction that I loan money to. We collectively as investors loan money to. I worked as an advisor. I helped the company with a number of operational issues. It paid the money back in a year and a half. Now we have a 4% royalty stream indefinitely on the gross income. So that's an income stream that rolls in every month to all the investors. Everyone's very happy. That's one of several deals.
I mean, talk a little bit about, I know your former partner, Earl Pasquale. Tell me, I know he got charged with some of the identical fines that you went through as well. Can you talk a little bit?
Yeah, it's really unfair. Earl is probably he's certainly a pillar in the community in Vancouver. He's a man of high moral fabric, and Earl basically the way companies are set up is in Canada, limited companies, you need a few officers, you need a president, you need a secretary treasurer. I was essentially the president of all the companies, and Earl came on more than anything as an administrative clerk, and I called all the shots. I made all the decisions. Everything that happened in the organization was under my direction. And what happened in the end, because he was a director, he was also named in the adjudication that was ruling that came against us. It was completely unfair because he had no real participation in any of the decisions, and the entire amount of any fine, any responsibility should have been 100% my own. And I call him an innocent bystander. He's just a very, very decent man. Time will tell, and I think I've rebuilt over the last several years again here in Las Vegas in a very positive way. And what I do, it's funny, any negative article comes out, I bring it out to the investors, I show it to them, and I tell them to read it. It's unfortunate with how reporters and media wants to skew stories sometimes, but I'm all right with it. I deal with it, and I have a lot of happy people. I've certainly made mistakes in the past, but none of it has ever been intentional. And as I said, the biggest loser on anything in the past has always been me. But we're on a decent ride right now, and everyone's doing really well.
That's awesome. That's great insight, Mike. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the final thoughts, the words of Winston Churchill in his shortest speech ever: never, never, never give up. And I live by that. I always say to people that, you often hear the story of people who are multimillionaires, they lose it, and then they're able to rebuild it again. And that's the situation I'm in. And I think it comes down to a lot of the fabric that makes up the person. It's really just, in the end, a situation where you just, you know, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I believe in a lot of those type of thoughts. So I just keep going, and I do my best every day.
That's awesome, Michael. Thanks for sharing.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Michael Lathigee writes, "This letter details the irresponsible and unethical actions by TD Canada Trust in its handling of the repayment of its loan to Genesis. The drastic action taken against Genesis to achieve repayment of the TD Bank loan was both unnecessary and incredibly heavy-handed. At every opportunity, TD Bank deliberately pursued the most abusive course of action possible, without any regard for the substantial costs that would be borne solely by Genesis shareholders, and without any regard for the financial devastation their actions would inflict on the lives and savings of thousands of small investors. As the details of this situation are revealed here, I hope you are sickened, as I am to see how a privileged financial institution throws its weight around in a greedy grab for gain at the expense of citizens in its own communities. In short, TD Bank behaved like a swaggering neighborhood bully, showcasing bankers at their absolute worst."
You're my tribe. You're the people I've built relationships and worked for as hard as I could over the last several years, and intend to continue to do so. I do want to just read some of the parts of the article, and then I want to bring you guys up to speed, as I promised, what happened on my summer vacation.
Michael, when did the article come out?
It was in the Review Journal.
Which date?
In July. I don't know the exact date. In July, though. A former Canadian national who is listed as an officer of nearly 24 Nevada companies defrauded investors in British Columbia and must repay more than $16 million US, according to Canadian Clark County court records. Lathigee left Canada for Las Vegas before the commission collected the money, so the BC Securities Commission sued Lathigee in Clark County District Court and won a judgment in May requiring him to reimburse the investors. Lathigee is currently appealing. Lathigee's attorney, Jay Atkinson, said the case is based upon a questionable practice in Canada. Their proceedings are about as close to a kangaroo court as possible. In fact, it makes a mockery of the kangaroo court, Atkinson said. Though the BC Securities Commission called Lathigee's actions fraud, and this part I will address, he was not charged criminally in Canada. Mere decline to address the reasons. The Commission concluded our proceeding, he said, Whether there are criminal charges in the future, I can't say. It's 100% civil. It's always been civil. There isn't even an iota to cross over into that realm, but that's exactly what I always have to deal with. Lathigee is the president of the Las Vegas Investment Club, which notes on its website that Lathigee has spent the last 10 years rebuilding his reputation after the collapse of his last company. The BC Securities filing said the club's mandate is similar to the British Columbia investments dealing with tax lien and tax deed investments. So that's what they said. We've never as a club bought a tax lien or tax deed, but again, that's the stuff that I have to deal with. That's always written. Atkinson said the British Columbia Securities Commission reported Lathigee to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, which investigated him several times and found no wrongdoing in Nevada. As a matter of fact, guys, over the years I've dealt personally from the SEC with 8 subpoenas. I don't know if you've ever dealt with one subpoena, but a subpoena is basically about 500 questions with a part A, B, C, and D, and they ask everything that you're doing, why you're doing it. They look at all of your bank records. They look at everything, your prospectus, how you did your filings, everything. Now, normally, when the security, just so you're aware, when the SEC does an investigation, they want to find something so that they can reimburse their expenses. I went down, actually at one point, Richard's in the back of the room. He was my property manager for Highmark. He was one of the people interviewed. So you guys are aware, and I want to do this fully disclosed. I've gone through 8 subpoenas, 2 full investigations, and not once did I get a fine. Not once did they ever say you did something wrong. Not once. I can tell you that anyone who goes under this, it's a microscope on everything you've ever done. So I actually look at that as a compliment in here, okay? And then it goes on and they quote some things, but I want to tell you what came out recently, and then I want to update you guys quickly because I don't want to go on and on and on. But there's the BC Securities one of the BC Securities Commission's lawyers is named Johnson. And what Johnson even said in the latest brief is Lathigee does not appear to have ever received any funds directly, and that money was used operationally for his companies. Okay? So here's a little bit of what sort of happened on the summer vacation. First of all, in May, the British Columbia Securities Commission, what they ended up doing, there was an administrative penalty and there was a punitive penalty. And I don't know if punitive is the proper word, but there was 2 types of penalties. Anyway, they came down, and the one that they tried to enforce was the Canadian dollar one for $21.7 million. They successfully domiciled the judgment in Nevada in May. Okay, so that means that the judgment now sits in the United States. Does it have any impact on us as members? None. 0. Not any investments, not nothing. There's 0 exposure on anything. The exposure is 100% yours truly. That's it. Now, on August, what happened is they had sent out a demand order to produce financial documents. So I willingly gave them all of the bank accounts, everything that I have, everything that I own. Here's a list of everything. Okay. I flew up with my wife to Vancouver. For a second, Rich, can you take Conrad outside the room? Conrad, I need you to go up just for a minute, okay? Just for a minute. Then you can come back in. Come back in 2 minutes, Rich. Okay. And the reason, guys, is on August the 11th, my mother passed, and my little boy was very attached, and he's still like, oh, Grandma, I know you're not feeling well. He always asks about Grandma, and I don't want him to find out this way. Okay. So what happened was my mother passed on August the 11th. I was actually the very last one. We were out at a barbecue. I brought her back. Everyone left her apartment, and I came back in and I talked to her a few minutes. And then the next morning, her caretaker, we were staying on the same floor. Her caretaker came over, knocking on my door and saying, please come, your mother's fallen. And she had a massive stroke, and then she passed within 24 hours. And the day of the passing was August the 11th. Now, I was caught in a conundrum because I had a court order to produce all documents that showed any personal assets that I had by August the 15th. So, no problem, I always comply. And I get back on the 13th, and I talk to my family, and in a lot of respects, I'm the leader in the family. I'm the youngest, but I'm the leader. And I said to my family, I'll deliver the eulogy by Skype. And we informed Matt Pruitt, who's the lawyer for the other side. He got the email knowing your mother had passed. The documentation was due by midnight on August the 15th. So my mother's funeral was also on August the 15th. And what happened at approximately 8 a.m. on August the 15th, there was a loud knock on the door, and I went downstairs. There was 3 constables, and they gave me a writ of seizure. And behind them, there was 3 5-ton moving trucks with 11 workers. They entered my house. They said, Mr. Lathigee, we're here to seize everything in your house. Now, who's been in my house? Coin collections, stamp collections, art collections, lots of furniture, antiques. You know, I think I've taught you guys many times why you want to, hold a hedge in gold and silver. They came in, and it took 11 of them from 8 a.m. until shortly after 5 p.m. to load up the trucks and cart away everything. So what happened though during the day was I said, look, I'm to deliver my mother's eulogy. They took my phones. I said, would you mind if I could at least deliver my mother's eulogy by Skype, because my family is expecting me. Constable Devin Smith, who is a decent man, called Matt Pruitt, and Matt Pruitt, I could hear him on the other end, absolutely no way are you to return the phone to Lathigee. My family had no idea why I did not show up for my mother's eulogy. And it was only at 5:30 p.m. after the house was completely emptied out that I saw a young fellow walking a dog, that I was able to walk out in front, ask if I could borrow the phone, because my wife earlier that day, the most important thing I did was make sure that my little boy and my wife exited out of the house, because my little boy always loved and hugged police officers. Now he hides behind me when he sees police officers. So a lot of this is what happened. Now, to kind of bring you up to speed since then, I hired an attorney named John Moji. He has 39 years of experience in debtor and creditor law, and he told me under civil litigation, in his 39 years of experience, he's never seen such a complete violation of due process, constitutional rights. And so it's an ongoing battle, but I want to give you guys just an example of what's up. My wife's daughter had $362 in the bank account. She's 19 years old. Johnny's to my right. I call him my son-in-law. Very committed father. $362 in the bank account she's been using. Because it was Celeste's daughter, they seized the $362. Under law, I could put in a third-party exemption to claim that money back. They objected to the exemption, and my lawyer guesstimates conservatively that in legal time and briefs and filings, they spent at least $10,000 to prevent that $362 from being returned. You see, my lawyer has said, he said, Mike, you are up against a government with an unlimited budget. Remember, you guys have heard my talks in the past where I talked about judicial systems, and you have basically not only 3% of all cases that go to federal court are ever won by the defendant. Right? Remember that? And so you can see why. They just bury you. And so another thing, and I'll just kind of update you on two other quick things, but when their personal computers are considered part of your personal, and so is all the papers and binders. By the way, it's a little bit of a struggle for me right now because all of our subscription agreements, some of you say, Mike, send me a copy of the signed subscription agreement. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. It's all impounded. And so my lawyer said, well, you're not going to get any value for that. And their argument is, well, if we put a ton of paper and it's all there, we could probably get $70 or $80 for it. Who the hell is going to buy a ton of paper? And so on the computers, their argument is, remember guys, we had originally the LDIC cryptocurrency and blockchain fund because we were going to invest into blockchain, and we had that name, and then we changed it because we shifted to the LDIC fund. Well, their whole thing is right now that the reason that they won't let the computers go under any sort of personal exemption, which means I have no documents, no records, no anything, is because I'm mining cryptocurrency. And when you look at my computer, it's not strong enough, nor does it even have a video card. But this is the asinine battle that I'm up against. And in some respects, if it wasn't so ridiculous, I find it almost entertaining. So let me now focus on...
There's a book in there.
Well, yeah. Let me focus on the clubs and the club and the members. I've certainly worked really hard over the last several years, particularly on the gyms for the members. And congratulations to you all. You know, we're over 1,000 staff. The gyms continue to grow. We're looking at new areas. It's exciting, plus all the other deals. So congratulations to all the members. The British Columbia Securities Commission, I'm sure, is networked with the Securities and Exchange Commission. There was never anything they could do. I've done everything properly. All my filings are, believe me, it would have been some sort of massive clampdown again, but there was nothing because I've done everything properly. But I've got to update you on a couple of things and that are very important, and this is the whole reason why I bring this to your attention. Number one, because transparency and full disclosure is always a good thing. But secondly, recently I was, about 5 months ago, I was negotiating with Western Equipment Finance on getting financing for the equipment at low rates. And I'm very capable when I negotiate. And what happened is the other side in the negotiation process were succumbing and giving us what we wanted. And then what happened is they Googled my name. And at that point, what happened is they withdrew the financing. And here's another thing on a personal level. Over the last 3 years, U.S. Bank, Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, Nevada State Bank, Bank of Nevada, and Bank of America have cut all relations with me. They forced me to close down my bank accounts. They would freeze them and tell me basically I've got 30 days to get the funds out, between 2 weeks and 30 days. And that happened consistently with all the accounts. At this stage, on a personal level, I have 0 bank accounts, I have 0 banking ability. Again, all stems from what happened in Canada. What happened? There's no way, I'm listed on some system, there's no way I can open a bank account. Let me tell you what happened at Freedom Fest. I'll read you, first of all, the email that was sent at Freedom Fest to Mark Skousen, your cousin. Then I will tell you the facts behind it, but it just gives you an idea of what it is that I deal with. This is from an attorney in California by the name of Sean Berry. And so I'm going to tell you what he writes, and then I'm going to give you the facts behind it. I am an attorney from California. I want to alert you that Mike Lathigee is speaking at your event called Freedom Fest. He is a fraudster. I would also urge you to contact the British Columbia Securities Commission as well as verify the contents of this email. Additionally, he has a recent judgment as of June 2019 against him filed in Nevada State Court for over $20 million. You should immediately have Mr. Lathigee cease and desist from any contact with Freedom Fest now that you are on notice of Mr. Lathigee and his Investment Club of America. Okay, now let me give you very quickly the background. And this is from Michael Israel, our in-house counsel at the fitness club. First of all, thank you for bringing this to our attention. This was to Mark Skousen and to all of the staff, because Sean Berry sent it to the entire staff of Freedom Fest. This is not the first time we have seen Sean Berry throw mud. As Mike Lathigee stated, Berry is aligned with the Lowe's, who are plaintiffs in a lawsuit they filed against us and the former owners of Carmel Valley Gym. The court dismissed all of their damage claims against us without leave to amend, which is a perfect scenario. A huge win at the early stage in litigation. The court said that there was no merit to their claims and no chance of adding their allegations to support them. Since then, the Lowe's have been scrambling to get any kind of leverage they can. I've attached their complaint and the court's ruling in our favor. Note that the court also struck the negative statements about Mike Lathigee from their complaint. We have even seen Mr. Berry contact the current employers of a former Carmel Valley Gym owner to disparage Mr. Lathigee. He truly appears to have a personal vendetta, and that this is the latest version of it. I've never met Sean Berry, I've never seen him, but he's on the other side of the lawsuit. Regarding the BC Securities Commission's fine, Mike addresses this issue virtually every time he speaks publicly. I believe he even mentioned it today on stage, and he'll continue to do so. There's a lot of information about it available publicly, and he always urges people to do their research. Now, I'm in the process of filing a complaint with the California Bar Association because he's done some other things. He was at a Carmel Valley shareholder meeting, and 3 times he called me a convicted felon. Okay? Completely untrue. Never has been true. And that's what I deal with. And the problem is, the investors are there, he tells a bunch of things, he's an attorney, and they believe him. So, I have to make the decision to step away from the gyms until the appeal is completed. Because right now, my involvement seems to be problematic and in some cases hurt the gyms. And I'll continue to serve the club members and look at deals, but I'll be unable to have any direct involvement. We will still hold club meetings, and frankly, I don't really think you'll see any difference in anything, because there are projects that I'm working at, I'm doing due diligence, but I will not be able to take a formal role. I can advise and so on. So what do I think right now? There is a reply brief that was submitted this week with the appeals court in Nevada, and I think it completely blows and destroys the British Columbia Securities case here in Nevada. Only 18% of appeals are ever won, but I feel very confident in the law, and I feel very confident. The time frame on an appeal, I put in an application yesterday for an expedited hearing on the basis that a $21 million fine accrues a lot of interest on a daily basis, and you are hindering me by allowing this to go too long before it's heard. So I think I will get the expedited hearing, but that will still be 6 months to a year. If I don't get that, it will be 1 to 2 years. So, in keeping what I've always said to our members, 100% transparency, I believe and continue to believe, is a good thing. We are doing well in our investments and will continue to do well. However, I have to take a step back, and at this stage, because I've run into situations where Mark, by the way, all credit to Mark, he defended 100%. He goes, look, Mike has said this on stage so many times, you bloody idiot. But unfortunately, I feel like I'm low-hanging fruit, and the only time I get attacked is by people who I don't know, or in many cases I've never met, like this Sean Berry lawyer out of California who's losing a lawsuit. And so that's a little bit, and I, more than anything, told the story to make sure, you know, like, and it's funny because as bad as sometimes you think things are, my mind just goes to a different direction. I always think, my God, think of the poor people in the Bahamas, right? I like where I'm at. I've got a lot of friends in this room. I've got an incredible group of members, and I wouldn't change anything. And guys, keep in mind, I'm battling every step of the way. I'm a fighter. I think you guys probably know that by now. I'm a fighter. I'm going to battle every step of the way. And there's no way. Like, I put it in my head as a game. And the game is to win. And make sure also that all of the members win. So, guys, I'm hoping this will be the only update I have to give you other than a result in the next couple of years. But you guys kind of raise your hand if you kind of get it, why I had to kind of update you. Did you get it? You know, it isn't exactly how I wanted to spend a meeting, but you know what? Let's get the fall off on a big bang here, right? Look, I do appreciate all of you coming out to the meeting tonight, and I'm working on a few things. I've confirmed a speaker for November, and in November he's going to be pretty interesting, and it's sort of right up the alley. We will be doing a lot of investing workshops and teaching, but the one that I really wanted you guys to know, because I talk a lot about institutionalized corruption, lobbyists. So what I was looking at in November is I want to interact with this guy, and we're going combing through the books, and we're finding laws that are 100% created by lobbyists to enrich people who pay lobbyists. Wow.
There's a lot of them.
What? And to me, that's just institutionalized corruption. The other thing that still bothers me is during the subprime mortgage crisis and all the bad things that bankers did, not one of them ever went to prison. Not one of them was ever criminally charged. So it's not going to stop me from delivering the message that I always talk about what's going on with lobbyists, institutionalized corruption, what's going on in the financial services industry that has to change. I'm going to continue. But I don't ever want to be in a room where someone goes, oh, Mr. Lathigee, what about this and this? I read that. Look, the way to do that is you hire someone, they play with the algorithms, and you push down all that negative press. I don't ever want to do that. I don't want to spend one dime on reputation management. I'm not going to hide anything. I'm going to address it. And if anyone ever comes out and challenges me, I say, look, talk to the hundreds of members and those who are listening tonight. Talk to them. Right? Talk to the people who've been doing business with me, not by the people who don't know me. Guys, with that, I'll say goodnight, and 10 out of 10 to all you guys. Thanks for coming out.